This general meeting to order. Declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Are there any around the table? All right, seeing none, may I have approval to move the agenda forward as amended? Moved by Councillor Gartner, Councillor Maracus. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Would like determination of items requiring a separate discussion. Before we start, I do want to acknowledge that we have items 1, 3, 10, and 13 that are already going to be pulled tonight as a part of presentations. Are there any other? And I'll start with my right, Councillor Maracus.
There's one here. I'm just trying to pull up the number. Madam Chair, just give me one second here. Item 6, please.
Okay, item 6. Councillor Gartner.
Item 2, please.
If you can come back to me after.
Sure. Councillor Abel.
Madam Chair, looks like everything has been pulled
Great.
that I was concerned about.
Okay.
If there's anything else, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Mayor Dahl. Good. Councillor Perry. Great. Thank you so much. Councillor Maracus, are there any others that you wanted to pull? No? And Councillor Thompson? Perfect. Thank you very much. All in favor? Or is I'm a mover to move the items forward for discussion? Mayor Dahl? To adopt the items. What are we doing? That were not pulled for discussion? Sorry. Councillor Gartner? Mayor Dahl? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Madam Chair,
yes, Councillor Abel.
could I just ask for a review of what we have pulled?
Sure, absolutely. We have items 1, 2, 3, 6, 10, and 13.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, I did item 2 as well. Yeah. Great, thanks. Tonight we have, I believe we have 3 delegations this evening, starting off our first delegation.
Madam Chair, if I may, could I move in respect to the number of people who are here? Could I move item 3 forward, that we deal with that right after the delegations? I think most of these folks are here with respect to the delegations. Pardon me, with respect to that report. So if we could move that forward.
Sure, absolutely. Could we have a motion to move that forward now?
Yep.
And is that seconder for that motion? Sorry, clerk.
I would also recommend that we move item 13 forward first, as that's the presentation related to item 3. So it would make sense to have the presentation, then receive the delegations, and then consider the report.
I'm good with that.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Maracus. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So what we'll be doing this evening then is we're going to go right into the presentation, and then we'll have the delegations, if that's okay, for item number 13. All right, so item number 13, may I have someone move that item forward? 13, Councillor Gartner, Councillor Peary, all in favor? Motion carries. Mr. Healy?
Well, good evening, Madam Chair and members of council. My name is Jeff Healy. I'm here to provide a brief summary for you tonight on the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. As you're well aware, this has been in front of council at public planning sessions between 2014 and 2016 through various capacities in public planning. So just to give General Committee with a really brief overview, the zoning bylaw essentially regulates development and uses on lands within the town, and this is delegated through Section 34 of the Planning Act. Specifically, Section 26(9) of the Planning Act calls for amendment to all zoning bylaws within 3 years of passing of an official plan. And as Council and General Committee is aware, that the official plan that we currently have was passed back in in 2010. The goal of the review is to update current standards and incorporate new standards where appropriate and apply our progressive planning regulations to essentially to 2015 standards, as many of the standards reflect standards that were standard back in the late 1970s and early 1980s. And staff have held 3 statutory public planning meetings and 3 open houses between 2013 and 2016. So with regards to definitions and general provisions, just to provide a brief overview, we're essentially looking at all provisions and definitions within the bylaw, looking to review them, considering which ones are outdated, potentially to delete, to adding new general provisions and definitions as required, and also reviewing and updating parking standards within the zoning bylaw. With regards to residential zones, we're looking at creating performance standards or a new table which reflects uses and general provisions with respect to residential zones. And we're looking at recategorizing the existing residential zone structure. So with regards to single attached, we're looking at 6 single attached zones within the town. We're looking at 1 semi-detached zone, 1 mixed density zone, 1 townhouse zone, and 2 apartment zones. And we will be looking at consolidating exception zones where warranted. With respect to commercial zones, again, this structuring is occurring within all zones within the town. So with respect to commercial, staff are proposing to reduce the number of existing zones, commercial zones being 10 down to 6. With regards to employment zones, we're proposing to reduce the 7 industrial and business park zones down to 3. We are maintaining the existing environmental protection zone. We are proposing to increase the existing open space zones from 1 into 2, a public and a private open space zone. We're proposing to maintain the existing rural general zones and the Oak Ridges Moraine zones that are also present within the zoning bylaw. Some of the more major changes to the zoning bylaw with respect to the promenade. As General Committee is aware, we're looking at changes to the downtown area and the upper downtown and the promenade shoulder areas as identified within our official plan. More specifically, within the downtown zone or downtown area, we're looking at proposing 2 downtown zones, being a PD1 and a PD2. I think when this was last at a public planning meeting, there was a downtown and an upper downtown zone. So the staff have determined that the upper downtown zone is no longer will no longer be included and will be a single downtown zone. And further to that, there will be 6 promenade downtown shoulder zones to reflect the commercial and residential zones and institutional zones that are existing within that shoulder area. We're also looking at the addition of permitted uses and incorporating the policies of the official plan into the zoning bylaw. And this is a map of the existing promenade, the extent of the promenade lands as identified in Schedule B1 of the official plan. And this is a relatively new map which shows the changes to the promenade downtown zone and the 6 promenade shoulder zone categorizations that staff are currently proposing. And I will also note that this is to the extent of the downtown, the upper downtown, and the promenade downtown shoulder areas. And staff have also looked at the Aurora Promenade with respect to parking, and we're looking at area-specific parking standards which reflect the downtown area and the downtown shoulder. And there are reduced parking standards which are identified on page 18 of the staff report. And this is a map of the proposed parking standards with respect to the promenade. You could see the downtown zone and the shoulder zones, which have separate parking rates for each of them. And then there's a special downtown area located to the east of Temperance Street over to Yonge Street, which has specific provisions for that area as well. I'd like to also identify a bit with respect to institutional zones. So all existing institutional zones are to be retained within the zoning bylaw, with the exception of lands within the promenade downtown. And this is to be consolidated with the Promenade Downtown 1 zone that is being proposed. The maximum building height for institutional zones in the existing bylaw is 28 meters, and staff is proposing to reduce this height for all institutional lands that are outside of the Promenade Downtown zone to 15 meters. And so that equates to about 4 stories. We've looked at all existing institutional buildings within the town, and we can find about one property, being the Chartwell Seniors Residence, that would not conform to this proposed height change. But we plan to address that as part of a site-specific zoning. And then within the Promenade Downtown zone, there are specific, this includes town-owned assets such as the library, the old library, and the Aurora Cultural Center, and it also includes a private parcel owned by the United Church. And so staff are proposing to reduce the height of those institutional zones down from 28 meters to 18.5 meters to meet the policies of the promenade plan. With respect to the mapping, again, staff have revised the Schedule A with regards to land uses. I would like to note that the latest mapping is still to be updated, and that will be provided prior to final passing of the bylaw by council. But we do have revised mapping for the promenade zones, the parking zones, and then the existing maps with regards to the natural hazard overlay and the wellhead protection maps are still current from what you saw the last time in April. With regards to exceptions, staff are currently in the process of creating a separate section for exception zones, and this will help with the administration and creating a more user-friendly section of the bylaw with respect to exception zones. So the final exception zones haven't been released at this time, but we will be releasing that prior to final approval by council. With respect to public comments, to date, staff have received comments from approximately 15 residents, 4 business owners within the town, and about 6 stakeholders. I'd also like to note we're continuing to work with the region of York with regards to the lands affected by the expropriation of road widening provision. That's within our general provisions within the bylaw. And specific comments with regards to public comments received to date are outlined in pages 25 to 27 of the report. And finally, I'd like to note that a peer review has occurred with the zoning bylaw reviewed by Lehman Associates. The town has also acquired an external solicitor, Harold Elston, who is assisting us with the legal review of this bylaw. And staff will recommend tonight that General Committee approve the comprehensive zoning bylaw review and bring the zoning bylaw forward at a future council meeting for a final review and final approval of the document. And if there's any members of the public who are interested in finding out more information about the zoning bylaw, you can visit our link at aurora.ca/comprehensive zoning bylaw review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Great job. Thank you very much. It's a very, very, very big piece of work. Don't leave yet. Do we have any, may I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Peary. Any questions or comments for Mr. Healy? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Healy and the Planning Department. This has been a huge undertaking. With respect to the mapping slide, you said that the Schedule 3A3 Natural Hazard Overlay Map is going to be retained, the Wellhead Protection Area Map. You didn't mention the Oak Ridges Moraine mapping. That's going to be retained as is? Through you, Madam Chair?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can clarify that. With regards to Schedules A3 and A4, there have been no changes with regards to those schedules since you last saw them in April this year. And with regards to the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning maps, there are no changes with regards to that, and that's being consistent as part of our previous approach.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, all in favor to receive the presentation? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, I think we can now move on to delegations. And first delegation this evening, we have 3. I'd like to invite Bob Ernst, representing the Christ Evangelical Lutheran Church. Please state your name, and you have 5 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
My name is Bob Ernst. Madam Chair, Mayor Daw, members of council, town staff, and all present here. As I said, my name is Bob Ernst, and I represent Christ Evangelical Lutheran Church at 7 Lacey Court in Aurora. First, I would like to express our thanks for being given an opportunity to speak to PBS 16-107, the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw Review, as it may impact development plans, our church property, which we have been working on for about 3 years now. Early in 2014, the Board of Trustees at Christ Lutheran Church decided to consider the development of a seniors retirement community on its property at 7 Lacey Court in Aurora. Our 2.8-acre property is ideally located with its main frontage on Wellington Street, Aurora's main east-west thoroughfare, with easy access to public transportation and to the amenities that Aurora has to offer. Our early research included visits to Aurora's zoning department and planning department to determine what we might accomplish on the property. We also requested and received a meeting with Mayor Jeff Daw and also with who invited Planning Director Marco Ramuno. Our development concept seemed warmly received, and in a subsequent email dated January the 29th, 2014, Mr. Ramuno confirmed that our property was already zoned institutional, as it would need to be, and that the permitted height was 28 meters. Based on these meetings and encouraged by positive feedback from this and other meetings, we spent much of the following 2 years doing extensive research into retirement and seniors facilities, including many meetings and consultations with town staff, professional consultants, including architects, business and political leaders, and officials at all levels, a variety of retirement and senior residence operators, and lenders and builders and developers, and so on. We have also met with a number of potential development partners, all with the view of developing a senior retirement community at or close to the 28-meter permissible height. Later in 2015, we presented our concept to the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation and applied for funding under their SEED program. Our application was approved, and funding has been provided to assist in financial feasibility and other studies. We engaged our architect, A. Robert Murphy, to prepare initial concept and massing drawings for our project. The drawings provide for a 9-story seniors retirement community at or close to the 28-meter permitted height. And these are all provided with the request which I submitted earlier. Okay, these drawings, could you spin that the other way? That's great. These drawings form the basis of a pre-consultation meeting, which was requested and granted on May the 14th. The meeting was well attended with representatives from planning, zoning, development, parks and recreation, and York Region Fire Department. Once again, the project seemed warmly received, and a comprehensive list of studies was provided by each department, which would need to be completed with a formal planning submission. The slide that you see there is a slide of a survey drawing of our property. It's hard to see the survey lines itself, but It has, you can see the church. I don't know if this pointer will work here. Is that a pointer? No. To the right, you see the excuse me, you can see the church here. Wellington Street is on our southern boundary. It's a major thoroughfare. On the western boundary, we have some residential, but it's bounded by a row of very, very tall and mature trees, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. So any building that we might put on this property would not be seen at all by those houses. On the east side, we're also bounded by a row of trees, but besides that, there's a 3.2 or 3 acre vacant parcel of land, largely vacant except for a couple of houses on the extreme north end. On the north end of our property, we are bordered by a fairly tall 12 to 15 foot hedge which separates us from the residents there, and then numerous trees on the boulevards on both sides of Lacey Court. So during the development of our plans, we considered the permitted height for our development and its potential impact on the neighborhood, and we were looking at those items with the major thoroughfare, the vacant land, the large row of trees, very mature trees. So taking all this into consideration, could we have the next slide, please? All this into consideration, we proposed locating the new building away from our neighbors' properties as much as possible so that any impact of our neighbors would be minimal. So you can see that this is once again oriented north top, south on the bottom. So Wellington Street abuts against the major portion of the building, and on the east side of the property is where the rest of it is. It's an L-shaped building, so we've kept the building away from residential areas as much as possible and pretty much out of sight from any one of them. Could I have the next slide, please?
Mr. Ernst, you're just gone over your time a little bit. Can you try to wrap up as quickly as possible?
I'll be very quick.
We'll give you some leniency.
This is just to illustrate on the left side, that's that
Sorry, just
row
a
of
moment.
trees.
Could I have a motion to give for the delegate, Councilor Marcus, Councilor Thompson, all in favor? Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Gives you a
I
little more
appreciate
time.
that. You can see the large row of trees, and if you look about halfway up the tree height, you can see the residents immediately behind on the west side. So if you were to draw a sight line from there over the top of the trees, you can see that they would never see anything within 28 meters. That's fine. And then the last one is just a quick look at the ground floor of the building that we're proposing. And on the top, on the right, you can see sort of a rounded structure. That is a combined auditorium worship facility that we're planning. We feel that most churches, you get to use the church for about 1 or 2 or 3 hours a week, and the rest of the week it sits vacant for the most part. Our proposal here is an auditorium-style feature within the community that would allow for students to put on plays and for perhaps overflow town meetings or something like that, as well as our church services and any other function that would be imagined in a theater, plays, recitals, etc. So we are committed to the seniors development project, which will fill an ever-growing need in our community and provide a very positive benefit to the town of Aurora. Things like seniors' needs and density requirements for the town. We expect to be able to make formal planning submission in early 2017, and we simply request that the current zoning remain applicable to this property pending that application. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ernst. Very, very appreciated. May I have a motion to receive the delegation? Mayor Daw, Councillor Thompson. Any questions or comments for the delegate this evening? No questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Really
indeed.
appreciate it. All right. Our second delegation this evening is Mr. Paul Cook, resident. Please state your name, and you have 5 minutes to delegate.
Good evening. My name is Paul Cook. I live at 111 Metcalfe Street in Aurora. I'm here this evening to again talk about zoning the zoning presentation in regards to our properties at 111, 103, 107, and 106, which is on Metcalf Street at the end of Edwards Street. And these properties fall into this area that runs from basically Englehart all the way up to Wellington Street along railroad tracks. And in having some investigation done for our property, we discovered through consultation with the zoning that there was a desire from the building department to change our property zoning from mixed, which is industrial residential, back to residential. And where our properties are, it presently doesn't make sense. So through discussion with councillors Tom, Humphreys, and Maracas, we got directed over to Mr. Romano, who's the head of zoning, and we had a very lengthy discussion in regards to where we are and where we need to be and our desire to remain as industrial residential. Through our discussions, he has recognized that there is a uniqueness with our property because of its location. In fact, he referred it to the hole in the donut because we have, if you're familiar with the area, property that owned by Mr. Priestley behind us and alongside of my property, and then Attridge Lumber, which is right across the street from us. And the GO parking is there also. To change that to residential for us to be able to sell our properties would be suicidal for us. We wouldn't be able to move them because of the areas that we have in front of us and behind us, and some of the businesses that are being operated in the property behind us would certainly affect our abilities to sell. So Mr. Romano has recognized this issue and has agreed to keep us in that zoning as we are right now. My concern with this whole process is, and even sitting here seeing the presentation this evening, is that there is a lot of reference to zone identification, et cetera, and the regular resident doesn't understand this. And there has been no communication with the residents in any of these areas. And through council, through departments, et cetera, there needs to be a bit more communication. We're talking about 9 pieces of property that are in this area. Some desire to have their property zoned residential because they see a future of residential being put in this area, which is fine and great. But through our communication, because of a situation that my wife and I are in, we discovered that this could have occurred without our knowledge until it happened. And it would have affected us had we not found out about it. A simple letter to the residents letting them know specifically what is happening would be of great appreciation. We have a number of, in these 4 residents that I speak of, I'm the only one that's actually still working. The rest of them are retired. In fact, one lady is 90 years old and had no knowledge of any of this stuff. It may not seem like a big deal, but it does if you understand where our property is. And through the discussions that we've had, it worked out in our favor. A lot of these meetings have occurred, a lot of information has been put out in the newspaper, et cetera, but some of these people don't even have access to a computer. So to go to these websites, they can't do that. And that knowledge needs to be shared with them. We're on a verge of a promenade issue. We don't know whether or not that area is even going to be affected by the promenade. There seems to be a big question there. But to go from M2, which is what we are referred to in our property, and I see the map that's up there tonight, it's referred to, I think, EX or something like that, an E, and there's been no reference to anybody. Nobody would understand that. I wouldn't even understand what that meant. So all we knew was we were industrial residential. So speak English to the people that are residents of the community so that they can understand that. And on one final note, I will leave this, and it's probably not part of it, but there is also an issue of heritage listing on homes in the area that was designated back in the 70s and 80s. And we really need to, as a town, address some of these homes that are listed on this heritage listing, because when you try to sell your house and that word is on that, people just back off. And I know it doesn't seem like much or doesn't mean anything from what I understand, other than to investigate. There are homes there that need to be listed as heritage because they are, but there's a lot of homes in that area that don't need to be, and they should be removed and have that removed. I have to go through a process to have that removed. And a lot of those homes in that area shouldn't have to. So another thing that we probably as a committee need to address too. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time that Mr. Mazzurro has done for us. It's been great, and we'll continue to stay in communication with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook. If you wouldn't mind just staying there for a moment, we may have some questions for you. May I have a motion to receive the delegation? Councilor Marcus, Councilor Thompson. Any questions for the delegate this evening? Mayor Daw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Paul, for coming out. Appreciate it. It's a townwide zoning bylaw review. And so your comment about communications is something we struggle with on a fairly regular basis. And as a matter of fact, our communications manager is here tonight presenting, and you're welcome to stay. We're presenting a riveting report. And we have the entire communications staff here on a new communications plan. But there's somewhere around 20,000 housing units in Aurora. And obviously, I mean, you're interested in your area, and I can fully appreciate that. Do you have any suggestions as to, I mean, I'm not sure how practical it is to send out letters to everybody, and when we do that with respect to other things, we hear on a fairly regular basis, no one ever told me.
Yeah.
If you've got any suggestions, we would love to hear it.
Language is the biggest thing. I mean, I sat here and listened to Mr. Healy's presentation, and I didn't get anything out of it because I really don't understand the A's, the B's, the C's, and whatever. And it's the same in my business. I'm a firefighter. We have our own language. We use things that the general public doesn't understand. And you get caught up in what the building, what you're doing in your zoning and whatever else. And I guess somehow in each area, if there's going to be proposed changes, instead of using the lingo, maybe we need to use the language instead. You get caught up in it, but people need to understand what is going on. And I mean, I would never have known, never would have understood by looking at that something had affected my property or anybody else's property along there. So asking me right now, Mayor Daw, I really don't have an answer other than let's try the English aspect of it, or our language that we all understand. Pictures speak 1,000 words too, and I don't know how you would change that in the picture because it's all proposed, right? It's all the whole promenade thing, everything that's going on there. The whole development or proposed or possible development that occurs in my area, where that along the railroad tracks there. But we had a very good discussion in regards to that and where it's going to go, and well, let's do it when it happens, and that sort of that agreement's happened. But I really think that there needs to be sort of a removal of identifying it as specific letters or giving us an idea of what that means in some sort of a legend of whatever, so that people can comprehend what A or B or P or whatever means, so that they know in their specific area it is. And how do you get it out? I don't know. I mean, you can mail it out. People see that stuff and they throw it in the garbage anyways. So you're only, I guess, going to get the ones that are interested or affects my backyard anyways, right?
You're not giving me any confidence here.
No, I know.
Let you know. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That was great. I appreciate that. That's good. Any other questions for Mr. Cook? No, thank you so much for delegating tonight. That was great. Appreciate it very much. All in favor of the delegation? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. We have our third delegation this evening. We have Sarah Miller, Michael Wright, and Brian North representing the Aurora United Church Southbound Developments. And if you wouldn't mind, again, please stating each of your names, and you have 5 minutes for your presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, Mayor Daw, and members of council, nice to see you tonight. I am here, my name is Sarah Miller from Foten Consultants, and I'm here representing the Aurora United Church, as is on this side, Mr. Brian North, and their development partner, Southbound Developments. And we're here in the interest of the Aurora United Church's property at Yonge Street, so the corner of Yonge and Tyler, and bounded on the backside by Temperance Street. This property right now, under bylaw 221378, is currently split zoned, both institutional and commercial subzone 2. Under the new comprehensive zoning bylaw, as Mr. Healy pointed out, the property is proposed to be rezoned to Promenade Downtown, subzone 1, and we are here tonight to respectfully request that a height exception be added to our PD1 zone to protect the existing height limits of 28 meters. Beyond that, I did have one other request, which is just to clarify from a planning perspective under Bill 73 that we will have the ability to submit zoning bylaw amendment or minor variance after this bylaw comes into full force and effect, just given the Bill 73 passing. And I've outlined that in my letter submitted October 26th, but I just wanted to put that on record.
Thank
Brian?
you.
No problem. I'll pass it over to Brian.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm Brian North, Madam Chair, Mayor Dock, councillors and staff. Thank you for considering this tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Aurora Chamber. Oh, sorry. I apologize. I get up in front of a podium and I apologize. I'm here on behalf of the United Church as chair of the building committee, and I appreciate you considering what we're asking for. We have been in negotiations with southbound developments now for succession developments now for almost a year. We're very close to having something to submit. We've done some preliminary sketches and drawings, and by changing this from 28 meters to 15 will definitely affect our relationship. We've been outside of our home for quite a while. We have been very lucky to have Trinity take us in and allow us to use their space, but not having your own home is very hard. And succession has made us or worked with us to help us build our church along with a development that they will put in, and we will completely retain ownership of the property. So I really would appreciate your consideration of this. And I just want to let you know Santa's watching.
We better be nice, not naughty. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. May I have, thank you, may I have a motion to receive? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Marakis, any questions for Councillor Abel, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. Ms. North, you wear many hats in our town, so I can appreciate the slip there. Were you consulted on the change in the zoning as how it might affect the church? It was mentioned that you've been doing this for months, so I'm just wondering if you would, the consideration you're asking us right now, was that conversation or request made known to our planning department for this bylaw?
It was when we were made aware of it. So a couple of weeks ago, we did have a discussion with planning staff on the retention of the existing height permissions, and were advised to submit formally and present here this evening.
And you also stated that if it did go through there, you could always come back for an exemption to the bylaw if for some reason we didn't meet your request. Is that what your letter is outlining?
No, this letter is just asking for retention of the existing 28-meter height limit, and it's through an exception, so it would be PD1 XX in that planning language that I know is difficult. It's a challenge.
So is it 28 meters you're looking for?
Yes, it is.
And the restriction or the new bylaw is saying it is
15 meters.
15 meters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was going to say something similar that, Brian, you appear to us so often with so many different organizations. I can understand why you're just confused for a second there, but that's fine. I think we're all anxious to see the rebuild of the church, and I was just wondering if you could just take a moment to just give us a sense of timelines. You said that the plans are near to submission, but perhaps you could just give us a quick update on when you hope to actually start the process of breaking ground and rebuilding and once again seeing a church in our downtown.
Santa tells me to say it's dependent on your approval.
Santa is very wise.
But as you know, an unfortunate loss for your community was the loss of the United Church back in April 2014. Since that time, I know Brian and the congregation have been working on designs and engaged an architect very early to have those discussions with the congregation on an appropriate design. Myself and FOTEN, my planning firm, were brought in June 2016, and I know prior to our engagement, the church had met with both Mayor Daw and council, I do believe, as well as staff, if not once, a couple of times. We then had formal pre-consultation mid-June, and we're looking to make a submission in the next couple of weeks with, obviously with the intention to get through the approvals process as quickly as possible. But I think we're probably targeting mid-next year. You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Maracus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Brian or Sarah, thanks for coming, first of all. And I'm just curious, speaking of the submissions, is there any thought on, maybe you can give us kind of a gauge of, we saw the last one was 9 stories. Do you guys have a sense of where you guys are going to end up? Is it going to be 9 stories, less?
So our design will respect the 28-meter height limit.
So that's all you're going to give me? That's fine. Thank you.
To be quite honest, Brian and I discussed before, I think we would love to share plans with you, but given, I think, the stage that it's at with the congregation, we didn't want to make them public just yet.
That's fine. I just thought I'd see if I could.
Yeah, it's definitely not 9 stories.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think we're all looking forward to seeing those plans when they come through. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the delegations this evening? No, thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm so excited to see our church back on Yonge Street. So looking forward to further plans. And so thank you very much again. And may I have, I think, just all in favor to receive the delegation? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. Thanks again. All right, considering that we're going to move on to items for discussion. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Presentations by the advisory chair, committee chair. Are there any? Sorry. My apologies. We are moving item 3 forward. That was Mayor Daw who moved it forward, seconded by Councillor Thompson. So Mayor Daw, if you'd like to kick off the conversation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll put it on the floor as is.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson seconding. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do want to commend staff. I know that this has been going on for a number of years. There's an incredible amount of work that's gone into this. What I would like to do, and Mr. Ramuno can help me with wording where needs be, but for the institutional zoning, which would address the concerns of both the United Church and the Lutheran Church, to just refer that particular part back to staff, and also to refer the rezoning of Mr. Cook's property as well back to staff. I think the rest of the plan is okay. We haven't heard, although I did see an email, Mr. Ramuno, perhaps you can help us with this with respect to the parcel development at the south end. Could you comment on that perhaps?
Mr. Bruno?
Certainly. Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we don't have a concern with the parcel. We have been having discussions with them. They will maintain their existing institutional zone and height. Council approved that, or it was by way of a minutes of settlement at a board hearing 7 or 8 years ago. So there'll be no change there. They'll continue to have their institutional permission.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So in that case, I will just move those 2 sections of this. I would suggest we refer those 2 sections back to staff, and I have no issues with the rest of it if someone would care to second that.
May I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Maracus? Any comments or questions on that motion? Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the first delegate was, or presentation at the Lutheran Church on Lacey Street was asking for someone to look into it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Councillor Abel, Mayor
you very
Daw
much.
referred all 3.
That's good.
Councillor Maracus, did you have anything on the amendment? Oh, perfect. Councillor Thompson on the amendment?
Thank you. I guess through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, if this item is referred, will you come back with a report specific to those 3 properties, or what do you see doing with the referral?
Mr. Muno?
Report back to, come back with a report on my recommendations and some solutions in dealing with the institutional issues as it affects all those properties, in particular the 3 that, the 2 from the delegates this evening, as well as the issue around those residential homes that are currently zoned employment uses along Metcalf and Edward Street. So I'll have a separate report with the recommendations, hopefully in the new year. And I will have hopefully by then, a final zoning bylaw document for council to consider for enactment. But between now and then, we'll continue to meet with concerned stakeholders, and we will meet with all the delegates this evening, and we'll also endeavor to meet with those homeowners along at Metcalf and Edward Street that Mr. Cook referred to.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, Mr. Ramuno, sometimes when there are changes in use or in policies, there's a phase-in period or a grandfathering clause that's associated with it. You know, in the case of the United Church, we hear that, you know, plans are imminent. You know, will, as part of your report, come back and talk about grandfathering some of these cases, especially those that, you know, an application is due within, as we heard, perhaps weeks?
Thank you, Mr. Muno.
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. Oh, it's a good point, and I have had meetings with both the Lutheran Church and United Church representatives, so I was aware of those plans. I've seen some conceptual plans. We don't have a formal application. You know, my intent wasn't to remove their permitted uses, but we, you know, did have a discussion around, you know, reducing the height. You know, I've had further discussions since then, so I will report back. I mean, obviously, one solution is to proceed with providing an exception for those properties for them to maintain that height permission, the existing 28 meters height permission. And I'll certainly provide a detailed report for council, but it wasn't our intent to remove those institutional type uses from the bylaw on their property, being the places of worship and the retirement center. We'll certainly try to address the concerns that we heard this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm fine with supporting the referral. However, I would have preferred to give the members of the delegations an indication personally, especially since in the case of the United Church, they have an application that's due any time. I would have liked to have seen council at least give some direction and indicate that they'd be willing to grandfather the United Church, and depending on the timing with Lacey Court as well. But if Mr. Ramuno can come back with that report in a relatively short period of time, I'm okay as well, and perhaps I'll leave it in his hands to give direction to the delegates.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Just before we're going, Mr. Muno, is there any chance that we can get the report back before next council? Just in terms of the exceptions that we're talking about, those 3 specific tonight.
Through you, or to you, Madam Chair, I think I'll be able to provide council with a report and perhaps an assurance. And just to clarify, I mean, you know, they have their existing, you know, permissions. Now, if they were to come in with a formal application, they would you know, in advance of the enactment of the zoning bylaw, which again, I don't foresee us having a final bylaw for council until probably January. And I think we may see applications from both those landowners before then, and they would definitely then be grandfathered in, the existing height permission. But I can provide a bit more detail with respect to my thoughts based on what I've heard this evening and in my discussions with those property owners about you know, maintaining their existing permission. And just to clarify for council, their applications, you know, would entail coming in with a full site plan application, and in some instances even a zoning to tweak to tailor their development to their site. So that would require, and you know, at least in the United Church instance, a full public planning process. And that is another opportunity for council to take a look at, you know, what the development is going to look like from a massing and height and a height perspective. So.
Thank you, Mr. Muno. Councilor Abel?
So I can appreciate when Carl Bray took us for a tour along Mosley, and he showed that streets were purposely dead-end to allow at the end the grandeur of benchmarks. And in the case of Trinity Church, when you come up center, and in the case of Mosley, looking at United Church, I really like to know that sort of grand look. So that's immediately why I'm saying I would like to see an exemption. But I would like to know if, and we have no idea, but is the exemption, is it a cathedral with a bell tower and a steeple? Is that why it's going to be that high? And in the case of the retirement residence, does that include residents going 9 stories? So I kind of like to get a feeling if, yeah, the bell tower, because it's an institutional sort of thing and it's a benchmark, as I just described, and the 5-story limit is in place for residents. And that sort of clarification I would like to know for my own, because I see in one case, Lacey, you could make the church on Lacey, and then that retirement coming down 9 stories across Wellington. Well, that would be a huge exception of what we've got. We may set a precedence, that being primarily residential as opposed to institutional. So is there a way of clarifying that for me, Mr. Ramuno, so that I'm a little more comfortable that we're not allowing 9 stories and everyone's going to start coming in because we've made that precedent ruling?
Thank you, Councilor Mr. Ramuno.
Sir,
Oh, apologies. Oh. Okay, but I'll let this, please, if you don't mind, Mr. Ramuno, answer that, and we'll go to Councilor Maracus. So, Mr. Ramuno, if you can answer that one.
certainly, through you, Madam Chair, to Councilor Abel's question. Just to clarify, the 2 delegates that spoke this evening, they're the Lutheran Church site and the United Church. They currently have an institutional zone on their property, and a height permission of 28 meters. And what's permitted there are places of worship, schools, hospital, and a retirement center. So they do want it, so they have development rights or permissions for those uses and a height of 28 meters. And so they want to protect that. They don't want to see reduction in height moving forward. And the plans I've seen to date, and again, not in any significant detail, but I think the Lutheran Church did have some plans. They are looking to, build a place of worship. Place of worship may not necessarily be, 28 meters. There may be a steeple or tower as well. But the retirement home component of their plan, they want to take advantage of that 28-meter height. And the way and the way the bylaw is worded, it's 28 meters. We don't know how many stories. I think we heard 8 or 9 stories. But with respect to the United Church, they also want to see a prominent place of worship on Yonge Street to take advantage of that vista from Mosley, and a retirement center, a home in behind it, and again, to take advantage and have flexibility of a 28-meter high building.
Thank you. Councilor Abel? Okay. Councilor Maracus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno, actually, but just before I ask the question, I kind of agree with Councilor Thompson. I would prefer to maybe come to some kind of finality here with when we have the residents here, and they're kind of looking for us to make a decision, whether it's grandfathering in or maybe through you to Mr. Ramuno. Does it make more sense to have a site-specific exemption on this instead of grandfathering in? Is that the type of thing that you're going to be looking at to bring back to us?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Apologies, Madam Chair. No, I think the option is, they're currently zoned, as I mentioned, institutional. So when we do overlay the promenade, it'll have a promenade zone, but it would specifically permit the same institutional uses that they currently have. And we would then refer to, if we're going to keep, and I'm hearing it loud and clear that there's really no objections to maintaining their 28-meter height limit, that would be clearly embedded in the new zoning bylaw. They would keep their same institutional uses, and the height would be to a maximum of 28 meters. And again, just to clarify, in our report, we did identify, we had a couple attachments that identified those institutional properties throughout town that have those uses and that 28-meter height permission. And there are really only a handful of privately held institutional lands that are zoned institutional. And, you know, the Lutheran Church and United Church are two of the more significant sized properties.
Thank you. Councilor Maracus?
And so I guess if we are going to get a report back as quick as possible, then I guess I'm fine with the thing, but I would have preferred that maybe we just kind of made that decision tonight. I'm okay with it.
I'm with you, Councilor Maracus. Let's make a decision tonight, 'cause I think we all want to do the right thing and just make it go, move forward. But if we get that report in quickly, Santa's watching, we have to make him happy. Let's get this done quickly, and hopefully we'll have some great answers for everyone in the near future. Any other comments for item 3, our zoning bylaw? I'm sorry, for the referral. No, hang on. The count clerk will make a bit of a clarification on this.
So I don't see this as an amendment. It is a referral of the section, the institutional section, and the section that deals with the Metcalf properties.
Okay, perfect. Councilor Maracus?
We should deal with the referral section first and then go back to the main motion. Yeah.
Voting on the referral of those 3 properties at the moment. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Back to the main motion as amended. Councilor Maracus? And not amended at all, actually.
It's not amended.
That's so confusing. But Councilor Maracus, Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, you know, we get a lot of applications in front of us that are asking usually for a lot of variances and a lot of changes to our zoning. And so and we hear a lot of times when they come and we ask them, I know I ask them every time they come up, why so many zoning changes? And a lot of times we hear, well, your zoning bylaws are out of date. And so through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, now that we're doing this and we're updating our zoning bylaws, are we going to see less and less applications coming forward to us that are asking for 10, 11 changes to our zoning?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Madam Chair. We'll continue to see, you know, applications, zoning amendment applications. Particularly within the promenade stretch that we're actually rezoning to conform with our official plan. You know, the upper downtown and the downtown, that area of Yonge Street from Cousins to the south up to Mark Street. You know, we're harmonizing that zone, that zoning. So we're hoping that when those properties come forward for redevelopment, we may not see as many, you know, requests for variances to the zoning bylaw. Having said that, though, and we did refer to it in our report, dating back now 6 months or so, there was an amendment to the Planning Act that requires or that states that once the municipality prepares a comprehensive zoning bylaw amendment, there is a 2-year freeze on any applications. Now, they've provided a bit of an out clause to municipalities and councils because we are going to see, you know, development moving forward and redevelopment. And I've always told council that, you know, most zoning bylaws, even though you update them, you can't, you know, capture every type of eventuality, and most developments, you know, need to tailor their zoning to that actual development. But in that case, when an application does come forward, the act is clear. Once this is passed, sometime in the new year, a request for a zoning bylaw amendment application, we won't be able to receive that application without coming back to council and seeking their direction and resolution to allow us to actually take that application in for consideration, and then we go through that form of public planning process. And, you know, I can certainly provide council with a future update on how we can handle that. It's dealing with those case by case or some type of, you know, general resolution that deals with this type of application or another type of application. But back to your original question, you know, we'll continue to see applications, but we're hoping with an updated zoning bylaw that there may be less of a need for some property owners to request zoning amendment applications or as many variances through the Committee of Adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. And just as a follow-up, Madam Chair, I mean, I'm not sure if everyone's aware within the structure and the legislation that was put forward under Bill 73 and the so-called freeze that some like to call it. Mr. Romero, with all due respect, I know you like to use the word freeze as many of the development community do. I don't consider it a freeze. What I consider it is what the municipalities are asking for, and which is is that if you're looking for changes, if you want an exemption, you bring forward an exceptional application, and if we feel it betters the community, we'll allow it. And I think that's a good start, as I said many times, and so I'm looking forward to when we pass this zoning bylaw, so therefore we do have a bit of more control on how we grow within our town. So, like I said, I think this is a great first start, and hopefully the province will make those changes to the OMB, and we can have the necessary authority that we need.
Thank you, Councillor Maracus. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Two things. First, along the same lines, through to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, we have a letter from FOTAN in front of us that speaks to Bill 73 and the zoning bylaw amendments, and they're actually asking us to provide them confirmation in writing that should they come forward with those within that first 2-year period, we'll allow it. And so I guess my question to you is, will that be part of the referral, or have you already committed to providing that to them?
Mr. Runo?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Thompson, if you're asking about FOTAN's request or United Church request to allow them to submit an application, at this point I think it's premature because we don't have a new bylaw in place, but I appreciate their concern that if we do have a bylaw in place come January 2017 and they haven't submitted an application and they need a rezoning, they still have to come forward to council through a report from me requesting that council allow us to receive that application. Having said that, hopefully, if they do get their application in, and I think they've been working hard on submitting an application before the end of the year, they don't need to worry about that. But if they are delayed, I will provide a report. I don't think council could always pass a resolution now in their case, because they have made that formal request that they're working on an application, and council could pass that resolution. If you'd like, when I report back, hopefully next week, I can provide some options there as well, and I'll have further discussions with FOTAN and the United Church. But I understand their concern.
That's fine. I'm fine to wait till next week, and I think that, as Councillor Maracus stated, that this may be one of those exceptional cases. So we'll see what the report says next week. My other one really is about communication, and we heard one resident speak about, that they didn't really get communication, and I completely understand Mayor Dawes' point that, it's a challenge to send out communication to 18,000 or 20,000 homes. But at the same time, my understanding of this process that we've gone through with the zoning review is really a lot of harmonization, and there weren't a lot of changes or substantive changes in use. In the case of the properties on Metcalf, there was a change in use from a mixed use of residential industrial to residential. So I guess my question through you to Mr. Ramuno, do you have any sense of how many changes in use were proposed through this process similar to what happened in Metcalf? Because, and I'll tell you where I'm going with this, is that if it was less than 1,000 or less than 500, then I think then we could have, had a communication plan to go out to those that had that change in use to notify them of those changes in use so that they could have participated or at least, been well informed. And so, do you have any sense of how many were affected?
Thank you. After you, Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Madam Chair, honestly, we haven't, even with the promenade overlay, we haven't been we're not removing any existing permitted uses or burdening those properties with additional sort of standards. It's really probably only dealing with these, delegations we've heard this evening with respect to, the recommendation or suggestion to reduce the height for those institutional zones and those Metcalf and Edward Street properties, which again, it's a unique situation. And, we thought we would be benefiting those owners by recognizing that they are residential structures, and let's give them a residential zone as opposed to the old historic employment zone. So no, as the mayor mentioned, we've got about over 20,000 sort of residential and non-residential properties townwide, and we don't really believe we are impacting anybody's ability to use their property as they are currently zoned for today. And as far as sort of the public consultation, we've commend my staff who did the majority of the work, Jeff Healy and our manager, Glenn, who's been working at this for the last 3 or 4 years. Extensive public consultation. True, we didn't send out individual mail-outs to all of those property owners, but we've had 3 open houses, 3 or 4 public meetings, website information. So I don't think we have, I think it's a testament to the number of folks that are in the chambers this evening raising some concerns. It's really just a handful of those property owners, and we have been talking to them and will continue to talk to them to resolve their issues.
And thank you, Mr. Romero, and that's encouraging. But I guess, if the plan isn't to finalize the bylaw until January, perhaps if we could go back to staff and just have another review to make sure that anybody, if it's just a handful of properties that are being changed, that we've made that attempt to at least connect with them and advise them, because I'd rather deal with it before we approve the final zoning bylaw than to find out somewhere in 2017 or 2018. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further, Councilor Perry, my apologies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple brief comments. I think we most often get into trouble when we start presuming what our residents will want without actually asking them or advising them. So in future, I would prefer that we not assume that we're doing what the residents want, but we take the time to go talk to them and ask them that. Along the lines of Councillor Thompson, I think it would be a useful exercise to identify wherever we're making any changes to properties, identify those changes as either a green light issue, a yellow light issue, and then a red light issue. And wherever there is a drastic change, that would be identified as a red light issue, and we could be proactive about this and having a conversation with them so that they don't come to us after the fact or during saying, we didn't find out about this until about a month ago. So I think that's an opportunity where we can maybe do better. And I think it's it might be a time issue, but it's not a difficulty issue. I think it's something that could be easily arranged. And I just, based on the comments, I look forward to hearing about the plain language policy that our communication staff is going to be developing. I think it'll go a long way to helping the residents, take the jargon out of what we say on a daily basis and put it into language that everyone understands. So I look forward to seeing that. And I've said it before, this policy as it exists came into effect 9 years before I was born. I think it's time that we update it, and I appreciate the work that we've done so far.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councilor Gardner?
Madam Chair, I certainly agree with the comments that were made at the table because they make sense, and we want our residents to fully understand what it is we're trying to do, especially when we're making improvements. A question to you, though. I have questions on the definitions and the general provisions. They don't really pertain to anybody who's sitting in the audience now. Should I be asking those questions at this point?
Sorry, Councilor Gardner, I do believe this is the time the item's on the table at the moment, so I don't think we have another opportunity to speak to it so if you have some questions you'd like, I know it's difficult for.
To everybody in the audience, feel free to leave. I will not be insulted. I believe you will find this potentially boring. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Muno, just on the definition section. On page 13, we discuss building height. This is actually in the bylaw. And there's no measurement of building height. It just, apart from the first story can be 1.8 meters. But, so when we're talking about, are we talking about stories in general, or are we talking about heights of building? Are we talking about them both?
Ms. Runo?
To you, Madam Chair, my apologies. Was it page 13,
Yes,
the
please.
zoning chart, the residential zone chart?
It's page 13 under the, sorry, under the definitions, page 13,
Definitions.
in the actual bylaw?
Oh.
In the actual, sorry, in the actual draft bylaw. Thank you.
Oh, certainly. No, this is, again, this is just a definition of how we measure building height. So the actual height and dimensions of meters is provided within those individual zones. The residential zone will identify, the dwelling is a maximum of 10 meters or 11 meters height. This just identifies how we measure that from the average finished grade.
Thank you. Thank you. On page 19, again, the definitions, it says that a dwelling stacked townhouse means a building that is divided vertically and or horizontally into 3 or more dwelling units. So how does this relate to what's happening at Yonge and Wellington? Because I believe those are stacked townhouses and they're 2 units.
To you, Madam Chair, that's, we haven't seen many stacked townhouses. That's probably your first example where you have units on, on top of each other, behind each other. Yeah, so that's a perfect example, the Carpino application.
Thank you. On page 30, it's with respect to Oak Ridge's moraine buffers. The very top net developable area, Oak Ridge's moraine. Could you remind me what the buffers are going to be around those sensitive areas or heritage features?
Through you, Madam Chair, just to clarify, so there are no changes to those Oak Ridges Moraine zones, so any of those buffers, we're not proposing any change.
Okay.
That ranges, I'll have to, those buffers around some of those significant features range from, 5 meters to even 30 meters for some of those significant wetlands.
Okay, so thank you. And on page 40, with respect to woodland, there's no size definition on woodland. Is it somewhere else in here?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe we have a size for woodlands. The regional bylaw does refer to, their regional tree bylaw provides a size, I believe it's a hectare. We don't identify a minimum size, but I'll have to
Thank you. So it would just follow on
check with
whatever the
staff,
region has
certainly.
for woodlands and woodlots? Thank you. Under general provisions on page 43, and I'm asking these questions at the table. I was surprised to find on the weekend that more people are watching us than I thought. And they seem to like the questions. So on page 43, I have it as 4.2.4b. How can that be? When we're talking about existing undersized lots of record, how does that relate to a block on a registered plan of subdivision?
To you, Madam Chair, it's a good question, a good catch. It's very unlikely we're gonna have a lot or a block that's within a registered plan of subdivision because they are recent that don't comply. But again, this is terminology, definitions that I believe, this in particular I think is a carryover, and we're not proposing any change. And I don't believe I've ever come across a registered block that's undersized. But it could happen, and if it's existing, then this provision would address that.
Thank you. And on page 47, daylight or site triangles, this goes back to, we had some issues with respect to hedges that were planted on private properties. So are we going to allow pre-existing lots that have hedges planted perhaps too close to the corner? Are we going to allow them to stay in place? I don't believe council ever heard back
Mr.
on that.
Amuno?
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, we're not proposing any change to the definition of, those site triangles. That's typically that sort of portion of property that's within the municipal right-of-way that's landscaped and it's owned by the municipality or the region. We have other bylaws in place to deal with whether private property owners, plant within those site triangles. Yeah, but we're not recommending any change to this definition.
Thank you. I didn't understand that was just for our right-of-way, not private properties. And then there's a whole section, it starts on page 51. It talks about porches, terraces, decks, balconies, awnings. My main concern is that when somebody is a resident in town, that their privacy is protected. And why are we allowing exceptions, encroachments for things like terraces and decks and awnings? Like, why would we even allow that? Because then we're infringing on the neighbor's privacy.
Mr. Muno?
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, these are existing provisions with respect to encroachments. And all bylaws, you will find provisions that allow encroachments on residential structures for, protrusion of a balcony or a porch. And, most of these projections that you see here, we've evaluated a number of other municipal zoning bylaws, even ones that have been updated to find those standards that we think are appropriate for, residential type of dwelling, to provide that flexibility to allow encroachments, because we are going to see encroachments. We refer to them as encroachments, but again, it's really to allow for those balconies and bay windows to encroach to within the front yard or rear yard or side yard to a certain extent.
I don't know, to me that means that developers can build more houses on a lot because they know they've got encroachments for people to put decks and porches. And you're saying that's basically best municipal practices across the board? I'm sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just need to understand. Through you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, yes, to you, Mr. Muno.
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. No, I mean, this doesn't really deal with, they're relatively minor standards, and it doesn't really affect the overall density of a neighborhood or a community. I mean, we've seen it in our new communities, and they've been in place for years, even within the 2B or 2C communities. The amount of sort of these type of projections, whether they're below balconies or porches, are standard industry practice, throughout the province.
Okay, the answer doesn't please me, but with respect to parking standards, I believe that starts on page 55. And another thing, the yard parking. It's not clear to me. Are we allowing people to park on their front yards?
Mr. Muno?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, the provisions of parking clearly identifies, parking is a driveway, and we identify specific widths and depths of a driveway based on a frontage of a home, and that is where a vehicle should be parked. So parking is really only allowed within that driveway portion of any lot under our bylaw.
So that would mean that if that was happening, the residents would come to the bylaw department and complain about that, because it does happen. Thank you.
Councillor Garner, I'm sorry, and I appreciate the questions, but we do have 10 minutes, and you're getting, do you have many more questions?
I don't have much more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do I have 2
You
10-minute
got about
portions?
Yeah, you have two
I'll wait.
minutes, and then you can come back if you want.
Unless nobody else wants to talk.
Does anyone have any other questions on the zoning bylaws?
Okay,
Okay, no, so you
I
have a
just
few
have
more
a few
questions.
more.
Go ahead.
I just have a few more. I found the standards that we're requiring for bicycles at schools to be not conducive to this activity level that we're trying to encourage. So again, is that we're going with the municipal standard?
Mr. Bruno?
Madam Chair, if I can just ask Jeff if you've got the, do you have the section on?
That's on
bicycle
page
parking?
59.
59?
Oh, no, sorry, it's 63.
63.
63, sorry.
Maybe I can speak to Jeff. I believe this is a new section that we've added. Jeff, do you mind?
Mr. Healy, do you want to come up and explain quickly?
Through you, Madam Chair. These are, the bicycle parking standards are new provisions that are being introduced as part of the zoning bylaw. This is a new standard that's being incorporated by municipalities across the province. So this is actually reflective of some of those standards that are in other municipalities in the Greater Toronto Area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is something we may want to look at. We're allowing a half a space per classroom in a secondary school, and we're a quarter of a space per classroom in a public school. I don't really know how to translate it, but that doesn't seem to me to be enough. And on the same page 63, with respect to barrier-free parking, again, are these municipal standards? The way I see it, the population is aging, and I think maybe certainly for a shorter term of maybe 10 or 12 years, we need to have more barrier-free spaces. And I don't know how this relates to our bylaw now and how it relates to the municipal standard, but I would like that to be looked at.
Mr. Muno or Mr. Healy?
Through you, Madam Chair, the barrier-free provisions, we have a bylaw, and we're recommending that be repealed, and we're putting that, incorporating that section into the bylaw, and I think they're really the standards that are currently exist in our bylaw. And I think they're best practice as well, based on our review of a number of municipalities in the GTA area.
Great, thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Last 2 points. One is on the secondary suites. I don't really understand from what I'm reading. Does it mean that every dwelling unit can have one secondary suite? And does it mean that if including one in the basement? And also, are these inspected, in particular the ones that are in the basement? I mean, we used to call them basement apartments, and now they're called secondary suites.
Mr. Muno?
So, through you, Madam Chair, we're not recommending any change to that secondary suite bylaw that was approved by council, I think 6 or 7 years ago. And the way it was worded, it provided as a right a second suite. It didn't stipulate that it had to be in a basement, a second suite within an existing dwelling, and we identified what zones they were permitted in. We excluded a number of zones, and we also provided a minimum floor area requirement for the second suite, as well as an additional parking space for the additional suite. And we also have a registration bylaw where we're encouraging owners to come forward to register those as legal suites. And as part of that, there are inspections, under the building code, as well as the Electrical Safety Authority and the fire services would inspect those before they're identified as legal suites and registered on our inventory.
Thank you. And maybe Ms. Van Leeuwen at some point, when she's not too busy, could give us an update on how that's going with respect to registration. The last one is amenity area. This is one that I'm really, I'm very displeased about. Maybe in the year 2008 or 2009, we had an apartment building that is on the corner of Batson and Yonge, a lovely apartment building, come to us for approval. And they were required to have indoor amenity space. And they weren't providing enough, and at the end of the day, I believe we insisted that they provide enough indoor amenity space. Now, and I don't know how it's happened, we are not requiring a developer to do any indoor space. They can do outdoor space. They can use the balconies, the porches. The whole idea of an amenity space was for the people in the apartment or condo to get together, to have a place to be, because apartments and condos are relatively small spaces. And frankly, we're living in Canada. There's many months in the year where the outdoor spaces aren't really able to be used appropriately. So through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Muna, how did we get from an indoor amenity area to an outdoor amenity area that includes landscaping that's not really accessible in the winter?
Ms. Runo?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think we are, specifying that it can't be indoors. What we're recommending and what's in our current bylaw is identifying a minimum, and I think for apartments it's 18 square meters per unit of amenity space, and that can be comprised of interior or exterior space, and we really leave it up to the developer to come forward with a plan. But we've seen combinations of them providing interior space as well as some exterior space, whether it's balcony, rooftop, or outside amenity space area. And again, it is, the new standard is in keeping with some of the intensification framework that we're faced with.
Thank you, Mr. Reno, and perhaps we'll talk before the next meeting. I don't think, to me, we are disadvantaging residents and we are advantaging developers' profits, because they can use that amenity space that used to be required. They can use that for an extra dwelling unit now. And so to me, that's just not fair to the residents that are living in that building. And it's been happening a lot for many of the requests that have come forward. And I just think that we're not looking out for our residents by allowing the option of indoor or outdoor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gartner. Any other further questions on the motion before us? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Stop that. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. That was a great discussion. At this point, we'd like to ask for presentations by the committee chair, if there are any around the table. Seeing none, let's move forward then to items for discussion. If we can move forward, if I could have a motion to move forward presentation, item number 13. If I could have someone move that forward. Councillor Peary, Councillor Gartner, all in favor? Opposed?
Or Stephanie, sorry.
I thought it was
10.
That wasn't my fault. Item 10. Everyone knew what we were talking about. Item 10 for Stephanie's presentation this evening. Okay, that's moved forward. Stephanie, if I could.
And then her report's the next.
Okay,
the first
excellent.
item, so
Perfect.
good.
Okay.
So good evening, Madam Chair, Mayor Daw, and members of council. Thank you for having me do this presentation this evening. I just want to begin by welcoming my staff here as well, several of which came out tonight. Actually, all of them did. Unfortunately, one of them, I believe, had to leave. But we, oh, no, never mind, there she is. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge them. Michelle Otar, Joanne Gorey, Doolin DeMello, and Jennifer Norton. And I really appreciate them coming out. For those of you that don't know, they are the people behind the scenes who work very, very hard on all of our communications products, as well as our social media, and pretty much everything that we do here. So I owe them a debt of gratitude, as I am relatively new here, for those of you that don't know. And it's great to have such a strong team behind me who are really able to support me moving forward. So this presentation summarizes Report CA 016-005, which is recommended to be received by Council for information. The presentation is on our communications reviews and delivered by myself, Stephanie Mackenzie Smith, the Manager of Corporate Communications, for those of you who are watching at home. And this communications review provides an overview and analysis of our existing communications and is really about helping us move forward as we develop a new communications and community engagement strategy. So just to go over what our goals are for this review and for the subsequent strategy, we want to be proactive, we want to be consistent, we want to be professional, engaging, and broad-reaching. So that's really at the core of what it is that we're trying to do with this review and all of these subsequent strategies. You'll notice when I talk about the strategy that what I'm talking about is an umbrella document, and there are multiple strategies and plans within it. So another thing that you might notice is that it's actually called a communications and community engagement strategy, which is a little bit different possibly than some of the communications plans that you've seen come before us. And I think that we really need to address the community engagement piece, because communications really only works if people are ready, willing, and able to hear the messages. And so coming up with new and innovative ways to engage our community is going to be critical to what we're trying to achieve from a communications perspective. So just to kind of reiterate what we're trying to do, we're trying to really move from an informational model of communications to one that's participatory and about collaboration. So it's about bringing residents in, it's about engaging with them, and it's about involving them in the processes and decision-making processes that happen here. And so we really want to talk about working together as a community, council staff and our citizens and business owners and everybody in our community to kind of come together and work as a team to come up with policies and decisions that affect everybody. So what are our challenges? I'm not going to lie, we have a lot of challenges. The idea of participation and collaboration definitely presents some challenges. We recognize that communications and community engagement is not always going to be easy. Our stakeholders have different levels of knowledge, time, and interest to devote to civic participation. So I love this graphic because I think it honestly depicts the to-do list that can be found in most people's homes. People are busy. We're busy with work, we're busy with school, we're busy with kids, we're busy with extracurricular activities, we're busy with elderly parents, with paying bills, with grocery shopping, and all of the daily chores that have to be undertaken to keep our professional and our personal lives going. And getting people involved in in local government is particularly challenging. I think it's especially challenging because people don't always understand what local government does and how it affects their daily lives. And really the level of government that people can have the most impact on is local government. And so part of our communications really needs to be about getting people to understand what it is that we do and how they can actually have an impact on decision making at a local level. So again, we face no shortage of challenges, but our job is to ensure we provide relevant, timely, and accurate information to our community in a way that is accessible to them. And so I am going to speak, I really wish that Mr. Cook was here because I am going to speak to some of his points a little later on, but that accessibility piece is really, really important because local government isn't always accessible to everybody. And we understand it because we work within that realm, but a lot of times average citizens don't. And so what we really need to do is figure out how can we engage with citizens, how can we provide communications that is relevant to them and makes sense to them. So that's really kind of at the root of what our communication strategy is about. So our process, how are we going to do this? We're going to do it through extensive industry research, as well as environmental scans, community surveys, as well as stakeholder focus groups, and interviews and workshops with staff, council, and community partners. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen between, council, staff, as well as internally within our department so that we can make sure that from a communication standpoint, we're recognizing what certain issues are going to be in the community so we can proactively engage those residents and get information out to them. So I think our CAO has done a fantastic job of really bringing communications into the fold as part of the staff leadership team, and that's hopefully really going to help us moving forward with identifying potential issues and really broadening our reach and engaging more people. We recognize really that process is going to be a collaboration. So just to give you guys a bit of background, we actually have not had a communication strategy in our town since 2011, and the needs of our citizens have changed, the tools available to engage them have changed, and as a communications team, our priority is to determine how our citizens want to be communicated to, and how they want to communicate with us. So it really is a two-way street. We don't want to just be communicating out to people. We want to make sure that there's channels available for people to communicate back to us. So our team is committed to maximizing new tools and platforms to involve citizens in the policy-making process to ensure that their voices are heard. So underneath our communications and community engagement strategy, which is our umbrella strategy, you can see that we have numerous plans. I will briefly touch on them as I go through. Of course, at any time, you're welcome to ask me any questions after this, or of course, you can contact me anytime after today. So under the umbrella strategy, we're going to have a media relations plan, a website improvement plan, crisis communications plan, a social media strategy, internal communications plan, marketing and advertising plan, an internal communications plan. And the other two things we've got are more policy-based, is an employee social media policy and a plain language policy. So I'm going to be talking about that a little later on. So again, I really wish that Mr. Cook was still here because I think he might enjoy that piece. So our media relations plan, what we're really trying to do is develop a robust and targeted media contact list that allows us to reach a wider audience. So those lists need to be updated with the most relevant contacts. And we want to identify opportunities for us to raise awareness of what Aurora has to offer as a business community, as well as a destination for recreation and cultural activities. So we want to be reaching out to a lot more niche publications than we have in the past, and really make sure that we're working with our local media. We're also working with GTA media and Ontario media, as well as those trade publications and niche markets. Really the goal with that is just to broaden our reach and see our name in more publications and get out there, because we're all really proud of what we have here as a town, but we want to make sure that everyone else in Ontario understands what we have to offer. So one of the things that we're going to be working on is a website improvement plan, and we have heard a lot of feedback, and we are working to make improvements already. We're looking at a full website redevelopment in 2018, but at the moment we're working on making information easier to find on our homepage. I'm going to just quickly do, when you look at the screen, there's a little sample video of what the latest draft of our website redevelopment of our homepage is going to look like. Again, it is just a draft, so where you see that community events, it's actually going to say community and council events, and it'll have the two most recent council, either council meetings and GC meetings, and 2 community events as well. So I'll just quickly show you guys that. I think I have to click here. So you can see at the top right there, there's some drop-down menus that weren't there before that say, sorry, I might go back, it'll come back, it'll say pay, engage, report, apply, and I believe that's it. So it's a much cleaner look than what you've seen in the past and what exists on the website now. It is also more of a full screen experience, so it's a little bit easier to read than the existing website, which currently has a big box around it. Again, this is just a home page, but you can see, again, so those are the drop-down menus at the top. We've made a lot of use out of the social media stuff as well, and I'll speak to that as well. We're really increasing the amount of content that we're putting out there. We want to make sure that it's visible on the home page for people. The other thing is including those YouTube videos. We want to make sure that people understand that they can watch their council meetings, that they can watch general committee meetings, and that information is available and easily accessible to them. So we're really trying to promote what's trending, what's going on right now, and what those big issues are, making sure that those are front and center so that people can find them easily. The box that was actually under this box is the, I might go back. So right there, you can actually see Parks and Trails Program Guide, Events Calendar, Jobs at Aurora, and Garbage and Recycling. So those are actually changeable. They're actually the top items that are viewed on our website. So we're going to make sure that the information that is most commonly accessed is right there on the homepage for people to find easily. So again, this is a draft. It will actually be live. We're looking towards the end of December at the very latest. So crisis communications plan, This will supplement existing emergency management plans and will serve as a guide really for our communication staff to determine what their roles are in the event of emergency. And we want to ensure that if there's another ice storm or other similar event, that we have the staff, resources, knowledge, tools, and best practices in place to get messaging out in a timely manner to our community. Social media strategy. Some of you may have noticed a change in our social media presence already. We've been putting out a lot more messaging, and we've seen a dramatic increase in the last month or so in our engagement, and our goal is really to keep interacting with new people. So, you know, we definitely have a base that interact with us on a regular basis, but our goal is to reach more people. We want to be able to interact with new and unique people all the time. And we're going to be introducing a lot more video. Video is really critical. It's something that for sure is a trending item, and it's something that more and more people are looking to get information through video. So we're going to be increasing our amount of video content. We also recently launched Instagram, and we plan on working with our youth ambassadors to get them involved in our social media efforts as well, so that we have youth in our community speaking directly to youth. Internal communication, so we are working with IT on improving the intranet. We're putting out our new newsletter this month that will, share the successes of our people and build a sense of teamwork and family amongst those of us here at the town. And really it's about keeping those lines of communication open, making sure everyone's aware of what all the different departments and individuals do within the town so that we can share each other and rely on each other's expertise and as subject matter experts. So our marketing and advertising plan, we really want to come up with a plan that ensures we're maximizing our marketing and our advertising spending and identifying potential cost savings, as well as new opportunities to promote Aurora as a great place to live, work, and do business, and play, of course. So this is the piece that I was speaking to earlier. So plain language policy, this is something that I'm particularly passionate about. So the language that we use can be a barrier to citizen engagement. If people don't understand what we're talking about, they obviously are not going to share their thoughts, ideas, and opinions with us. We need to be clear in our communication and everything from council reports and planning notices through to our website content and brochures. So things, we've also been working with our town solicitor and as well as with the clerk on examining what our options are in terms of planning notices. So we know that planning notices are something that are generate a lot of interest in the community, but they're often worded in a way that is full of legalese and people don't necessarily understand them. So we want to see what are our legal requirements in terms of what we have to say, and we want to meet those legislative requirements, but we also want to make sure that we're speaking to people in a language that they understand and providing visuals so people know what it is that we're talking about and that they can become more engaged on that because they understand what's actually happening in their community. So our timelines, on short-term timelines, we have our employee social media policy, crisis communications plan, and media relations plan. So those will be completed by the end of 2016. And a medium-term plan, so we're looking at kind of end of first quarter into the second quarter of next year, reviewing and revising, if necessary, existing policies and procedures. Our website improvement plan, like I said, before the end of the year, we will have some initial website improvements, and we are hoping to make more again in 2017. The web, internet communications is something that evolves constantly, and I think none of us believe that putting out a website and leaving it for 3 years is in the best interest of anybody. Technology changes all the time. We want to make sure that we're meeting those needs of our community and the expectations that they have. Social media strategy and the plain language policy. So I think the plain language policy is definitely a priority, and we have been looking at other samples from other municipalities, so we'll make sure that we focus on that. Long term, we want to complete the marketing and advertising plan, the internal communications plan, and complete the communications and community engagement plan, which is the umbrella document. And part of that will include really developing kind of a mission and a vision for what it is that we want to achieve from communications, and all the plans should really speak to that as well. So finally, benchmarks and metrics. These are really, really important moving forward. We want to be evaluating our success. We want to be measuring our success. We want to look at those social media numbers. We want to look at that engagement, how much information we're putting out, how many people it's reaching. Same thing with our website. We want to constantly be evaluating that to see what information people are looking for, what they're searching for, so that if they're maybe having a hard time finding that information. One of the things that with the new website that you may notice is there's a translate button. So by the end of the year, Google Translate will be installed on our website, which means that over 200 languages will be available for residents to read our website in. And I think that's, especially important as we address, the amazing diversity that we're seeing in our community. And we want to make sure that those people are able to access information even if English isn't their first language. So we're really excited about that. And we want to be looking at those languages as well to see, do we need to develop messaging that addresses those particular needs. So media monitoring as well is something that we're going to be doing and setting some metrics around, and looking at some of our mentions and some of the sentiment as well. And obviously reaching out to our community continuously through surveys and, and focus groups, and getting out there as many ways as we can to get that feedback. So as a final note, we're going to be posting as much information as we can on the process of developing this communication strategy, because it's not just our communication strategy, it's our community's communication strategy. So we want to have that information available to them. So as much information as we can will be publicly accessible on our website, and we will be encouraging citizens to go there and review the information and contact us with their feedback, and figure out how we can best involve them in the process as well. So that information will be there. We will, of course, keep you posted as we progress. And I just want to say thank you to Madam Chair, Mayor Daw, and members of council for allowing me this opportunity.
Wow, thank you so much. Almost want to clap, but may I have, sorry, don't go anywhere. I may have a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gardner. I know Councillor Thompson's anxious to speak. Go ahead, because so am I.
Perfect.
Thank you to Stephanie. It was an excellent presentation, and I'm very encouraged. Myself, as well as many of the members around council, have been outspoken over the last few years about our need, from our perspective, to elevate our communication, to revisit our strategy, and to do some of the exact same things that you're proposing to do. And certainly, I look forward to the rollout of all those different initiatives. And I'm very much encouraged by your comments around the benchmarks and metrics. I say every year at budget time, we need to be able to have some level of comfort around the time and the resources and the dollars that we continue to spend, that we're spending them in the right place, doing the right things, and that we're effectively using those resources. And so, I'm encouraged by it all, and I look forward to seeing more and more of your initiatives and your team's initiatives as well, because I know it just is one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any other comments or questions for Councillor Pierre, Mayor Daw?
I don't want to belabor the point, but I think ever since you've gotten here, it's been a breath of fresh air from definitely my perspective. It's important that we talk to the residents, not just give them information. So I appreciate that you're engaging in a conversation, and thanks to you, and I think Doug probably has a little bit to do with that as well. So thank you to everybody. I think it's definitely steps in the right direction. Thank you.
Mayor Daw?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Stephanie. Great presentation. Appreciate it. I have a different perspective from the other people sitting at the table, because, of course, I'm here, it seems all the time anyways. So I certainly get a sense of what your staff does, and I think they do great work. And I know that they certainly put in the hours doing it. So, ladies, thank you very much for what you do. And so I'm encouraged, as Councillor Thompson has said, to see the metrics, because I think that will show the work that is actually happening, and the value that I believe I intrinsically know is there. I think the rest of council will be satisfied that we are actually making a very good investment in our communications group. But to the question that came up specifically earlier with Mr. Cook, and he did admit that he had no idea how we manage that, and certainly the plain language is always a good thing. But how do you get that out there? Because we do. I mean, goodness gracious, Mr. Rumuna, how many times have we heard at public planning meetings, I don't know anything about this, but we mail letters to people. So what kind of steps? I mean, short of going and knocking on every door, which we can all talk about here, but fortunately only once every 4 years. How do we get that out there? How do we get people understanding what's going on? Because certainly, obviously, we're here to represent their interests. But
sure.
Thank you.
Answered?
Oh, was, I'm sorry. She'll figure it out. Sorry, please, Stephanie, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, I think that you are correct. I mean, at the end of the day, there's always going to be people that we're not able to reach, and again, it is because of that that piece where people are busy, and people don't always read their mail. They don't always answer their front door. They don't always, visit our website. They don't necessarily follow us on social media. They're not hanging on every, breath to see what the town is putting out next. And so I think that there's two different ways that we can go about doing it. One is the way we can change community engagement in terms of actually getting out and talking to residents. And that's something that we definitely want to be addressing in the council workshop. I think we have some ideas as well. And how we can, communications and council can work together on that. In terms of that in-person engagement, which I do think is important, because I think if people do feel that personal connection to the town or to their councillor, to that they're more likely to engage because they feel that they have that personal connection. I think the other aspect is we are looking at some technology tools that would allow us to push information out to people on a more, a little bit easier than we have right now, or people maybe have to kind of come and sift through information that may or may not apply to their particular area and their community. And so we are looking at some technology solutions and platforms that will allow people to indicate where it is that they're living and sign up to receive information specific to their things that are happening in their community, which would include community meetings as well as planning notices, things like that. So there's lots of options that we are looking at. And so, again, because there is that that challenge that we have with people are busy, and particularly in a community like ours where a lot of people commute down to Toronto, and so the time that they're actually spending, that they have at home is precious, and as their focus is on their family and their events and the things that they're going to. So we want to make sure that we're making it as easy and accessible as possible for them. And so it is a unique challenge. We're never going to reach everybody that we want to reach in our community, but I certainly think that we can do a better job, and we can set some metrics around that, and hopefully, look forward to building an increase of, people that come out to public meetings and that come out to some of, GC and council meetings and engage with us on social media and ask questions and provide their thoughts and opinions and answer our surveys.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Thompson?
Sorry, just one more. Through you to Stephanie. Stephanie, you showed us a little preview of what you plan to do for the website by the end of the year. Will you also make those same sort of changes for the mobiles and tablets website for the town?
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. So right now, our website, the way it was built, is not necessarily ideal for that kind of mobile interaction. We currently use a tool that takes what we have for our desktop and kind of scrambles it and makes it accessible. Our new website coming in which will be in hopefully 2018 at the latest, will be built as a mobile responsive website that will be written into the RFP. It is a huge priority. We know that a massive number of our residents access information through their phones. So that is a huge focus for us. In the meantime, we are hoping that any additional platforms or tools that we take on board from a community engagement and communication standpoint do have that mobile flexibility.
Thank you. And I encourage us to continue to talk about that. I know that the issue with the website has been raised many times before, and I hear you 2018, but it'd be nice if somehow we could maybe see some of that stuff come forward, but we'll leave it till next year.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just want to say thank you so much for the presentation. I'm extremely encouraged. I've noticed a huge difference since you've started. You have a great team behind you, and I'm so thankful that they're here tonight on their time to be here. They do an amazing job, and to have a strong leader and with your experience and background only leverage the team higher, and we're going to reap the benefits. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to much more coming from you and your team for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor to receive the presentation? Motion passes. Thank you. Carries. Okay, it's really easy, yeah, right. Sorry, Mayor Dahl. Okay, why don't we go ahead and move forward to item number 1, which relates to the presentation we just saw. May I have a, we're not waiting. Motion to receive, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Maracus. What are we doing? Just a moment, please. Okay, open the floor to questions. Councillor Thompson? Any questions, anybody at all? Councillor Gardner?
They're not questions, which is why I didn't address them earlier. And thank you so much to Ms. Mackenzie Smith. I have check marks and stars and all kinds of things over these few paper pages. I've been complaining about the website at this table for a while because residents have been complaining to me. So I'm very encouraged to hear that even with the start of the changes, I think the residents will see that we're definitely trying to make a change. And it's kind of a scary statement to say that we've had no communication strategy since 2011. I'm going to just leave that. With respect to the plain language, one of the things that I find is most difficult, or at least I hear from residents, is that when we have on our notice board what planning applications are going to be coming up, they just don't understand them. So if we could say how that could possibly, what the effect would be on the residents, I think that would be helpful to them. And of course, the benchmarks and the metrics, because none of this is any good without that. So thank you. Your team has left. Thank them too.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other questions? Councillor Abel?
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I really appreciate its refreshing approach. I like the idea of the branding and networking and getting out there. I have seen that already take place. Everyone has already seen that. So I think it's a proactive approach. We have identified it's a bit of a gap for a big corporation, and it's a huge challenge. And so we wish you the best of luck. And you know, it probably takes small steps, but something will hit, hopefully, and everything will go. But you've got to keep trying and casting and seeing what it is. And probably your background will also be able to pull out other successes in other communication areas. So I wish you all the best. And it's great for our council. I can't speak for everyone, but for me, it's just, it's long overdue. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Any other questions? Do we need to promote the person who hired you? Just kidding. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I think that's a good point I made. All right, so let's move on. Let's move forward. Forget about you. Let's move forward with item number 2, which was brought forward by Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just pulled it because I thought it had to be pulled, so I'll move it for discussion purposes.
Okay, perfect. May I have a seconder for that motion? Mayor Dahl? Okay, Councillor Gardner.
Most of my questions center around the youth, putting the youth component in this, because I see there's the applicant wants to have a special occasion permit to have a beer tent, that it seems to be youth during the days, but in the evening that seems to change. So it's Mr. Furman's report, but Mr. Downey is here. So perhaps if you could speak to those things. And I'm not sure, of course, we all know about the Winter Blues Festival. I see Mr. Smith is in the audience, has stayed. Thank you. But I'm not sure, is this a not-for-profit group? Like, what is the structure of this group? Kindly, if somebody could tell me that. I guess that's all for the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Mr. Downey, if you can answer.
Through you, Madam Chair, as the recommendations read, it was received from the Music Aurora / the Aurora Winter Blues Festival. The status of the group or the applicant, whether it's a nonprofit or a profit, I'm not aware of. This is simply a third-party application, and my understanding is that it would be they would be charging admission, and they were looking at a beer garden in order to help offset the costs of putting on this event.
Thank you. Councillor Gartner?
I'm just going to leave it to the table, but I don't know how we can call it a youth festival. There's something that just doesn't jive here. And, well, I guess while I still have the floor for the moment, under analysis, the require